Cory Smith, Pack Pride, joining us now on the Adam Gold Show in advance of the game in Chapel Hill this evening. Do I make any sense at all, or is there something else going on, not only with Trey Parker, but Paul McNeil and maybe some of the other freshmen?
No, I think you make complete sense. And by the way, I disagree wholeheartly with Graham. I think snow is very serene. It's beautiful unless you get stuck in it and driving a vehicle. That sucks. But back to the topic at hand here. I mean, I agree with you. I think this is the exact same thing we talked about last time around when I was on with you, and it was right before some of this stretch. It was right before the Stanford game. We were talking about Cal and how he had played pretty well and looked pretty good. But just isn't getting a ton of opportunities. And Keats has talked about this at times. He said the fact that the difference for him right now is top two players, which I'm assuming he's talking about the top two right now would be Marcus Hill and Jaden Taylor in terms of scoring threats for him. And obviously Jaden Taylor always gives you a ton on the defensive end, which is where NC State has kept themselves in games this season. But he said 3 through 10 for him is just kind of for better or worse, just kind of a crapshoot. Like, hey, who's going to perform for me on a day-to-day basis? And Trey Parker in that game against BC came out with 1 for 4, one of those being a 3-pointer, and just didn't get a ton of minutes the rest of the way. And I think part of that was getting the sense that Michael O'Connell was playing, at least from a distribution standpoint. Being that point guard that they needed in that game, and he had 6 assists to 0 turnovers in that game. And, similar for Trey Parker, though, 3 assists to 0 turnovers. And I think, part of the question at this point is how much do you just kind of relinquish that and say, look, what we're getting from Trey Parker from a point guard standpoint, it may not be the same thing as what you got from Michael O'Connell, but you don't have the scoring threats around him. You don't have a DJ Burns that you can throw it inside to. You don't have a Casey Morsell that can hit a corner 3 for you. You don't have a Michael O'Connell last year where he could just shoot, and DJ Horn last year where he could shoot. Now at this point it's having to find weapons around you, and Trey Parker is one of those. And I think that's one of the reasons why Trey Parker should still be getting more minutes, regardless of how he plays in some of these instances, because this team just hasn't been good enough to win a lot of these games, and maybe he lifts the floor of this team a little bit more.
And I just go back to the game. Look, Stanford isn't Duke, right? He had 19 points. That ball was like 60% in, and he was fouled after the shot, but regardless. But that shot from the corner that would have won that game was 60% in. He looks like a guy who can make a difference. And that's what, if I'm Kevin Keats, those are the guys I need. I need going forward. It's not like, I get it. Maybe he wasn't as good as other players were against Boston College, and it's hard to complain when you're breaking a 9-game losing streak. So maybe that is sort of displaced displeasure on my part. But he looks, they don't have too many guys who look like they can really impact the game. And I think you got to get those guys on the floor.
Yeah, and the other point I'll make, you brought up Paul McNeil as well. Trey Parker, I think, gives you an aggressiveness, gives you, a guy that on the defensive end is also going to, he's stepped his game up a little bit more. He's not getting blown by nearly as much, and he's, he's a good on-ball defender. I won't say a great on-ball defender, but he can get better at that if he's on the court more. Paul McNeil is one that I've seen grow exponentially on the defensive side of the basketball. I mean, at the beginning of the season, that's why he wasn't getting any minutes. But he's gotten better on that end. He's been able to drop a couple threes. The last game against Boston College, he cleaned up actually one of Trey Parker's missed shots, got underneath the basket, put it up immediately, got the putback and the rebound. And those types of things help you win games. Those types of things, help you break through in single possession games. And they're proving at this point, along with, Bryce Hurd at times. Bryce, I think part of the issue for him is he is really young. He's the guy that just turned 18 right before the season. He's still got a lot to learn, but, the talent is there. For those two other freshmen right now, I mean, they're proving to you that they deserve more minutes. I think, and it's just the point where you're waiting for another guy to underperform to put them in, and I don't think that should necessarily be the case.
Cory Smith on Twitter, Cory Smith. Pack Pride. All right, so today's game. Obviously, it's big for a lot of reasons for NC State. I think it would be embarrassing, to be honest, to miss the ACC tournament. But the path is there. Whether it's this one, Syracuse only has 4 games left. State's got a trip to Central New York to maybe put a dagger in the orange because you could take their spot. Give me their path forward, with or without tonight.
Yeah, I mean, if you get this game tonight, obviously that's massive for NC State in the sense that it gives you a 4th win. It kind of breaks you from that that stranglehold of sitting around 2 to 3 wins, which is every other team has slowly caught up to them at the bottom. Miami getting the 2nd win, it was like, oh man, now they're tied with Miami.
Right.
But the path forward for NC State right now is if you can win this game against UNC. That helps you in a massive way from confidence standpoint because NC State is one of only 3 teams in the entire ACC that has not won a road game or a game away from home so far this year. And the other 2 teams happen to be just behind them in the ACC standing. So they need to get a road win. That is huge for your confidence. Winning a game at home against BC, it helps, but it's completely different doing it on the road against UNC. But the path forward for NC State, even if you don't win this game, is you have Syracuse on the road that you mentioned. You have Miami on the road that you mentioned. You have, a Wake Forest team that's been kind of up and down. Obviously, they beat the brakes off of NC State earlier this season, but it was a close game at the half. If you're able to at least, keep yourself in that for the second half and try to fight your way out of that one, maybe that's a win. But, the real path forward for NC State is to guarantee, I would think, to get yourself in that mix, you need 4 out of the last 6, and that's because of the fact that you play Miami, you play Syracuse, you play Pitt at home as well. If you're able to keep those teams, at where you're at or underneath you, that's a chance to get at least to that 15th or 14th place. If you lose games to UNC, Wake Forest, and then one of those other 3, then you're sitting at potentially 6 wins, and you gave up one to another team like a Pitt, like a Syracuse, like Miami that's trying to jump you, and that's where you put yourself in the danger zone.
Yeah, if they can get to 6, that would be awesome, and I'd just love to see the freshmen be the reason they get there. Cory Smith, at @Cory Smith on Twitter from Pack Pride. Sir, enjoy the game tonight. I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. Have a good one.